Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Eddie Proudfoot podcast. Today, on our 12th episode, we're going to break down everything you can do with your action in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. So let's get started. Last episode, when we talked about what you can do on your turn, I mentioned there's this thing called an action, which we usually use to deal damage either through the form of a weapon attack or with spells. There are 7 other things we can do with this action that do not involve attacking. Now, here's what they are. First off, there's dash. What does dash do? It doubles your movement. If your movement in combat is normally 30 feet, then you get an additional 30 feet of movement. That's all there is to it. Doubles your movement. Let's move on. Then there's the disengage action, which is a little bit more complicated than dash. I mentioned last episode something called a zone of control. So if you move in and out of an enemy's zone of control, either because you were fighting them the turn before, or if you pass by them within 5 feet, that provokes what's called an attack of opportunity. This is what you can use your reaction for. You take your reaction, which you get once per round of combat, not once per turn, and you get to make a melee attack against that enemy. Now, if the disengage action has been taken, they do not provoke attacks of opportunity for the rest of this turn. This means they could run past 100 enemies if they're all lined up, and none of them can hit them because they've been disengaged. That is what the disengage action is, and subsequently it's also what an attack of opportunity is, which uses your reaction. Side note on reactions, there are some spells that have a cast time of a reaction, and when circumstances allow, you can use your reaction to cast a spell. Again, with spell casting, we'll cover that all very shortly, so stay tuned for that. Next, we have the dodge action. So dodge is another simple action. You basically take your action to dodge, which means for the next round until the start of your next turn, you make it so enemies that attack you have disadvantage. Next, we have the help action, which can be used in and out of combat. Out of combat, it's used to give someone advantage on some form of check. In combat, it's used to distract enemies so that the next ally to attack that enemy has advantage. To do so, you must be within 5 feet of said enemy. Now we have the hide action. The hide action is a little bit more nuanced than all the other actions, and that's because it references several other parts of the player's handbook. First off, it references the unseen attacker part of Chapter 9, which just outlines the rules for when you can't be seen, how attacking works. Effectively, when you are hidden, if you attack someone, you get advantage, but now you've given away your position and are no longer hidden. Subsequently, if you hide successfully, enemies are disadvantaged on attacking you. Now, the big asterisk next to the hide action is that consult your DM if hiding is appropriate in the situation of combat. Sometimes the terrain allows for easy hiding, and sometimes it doesn't allow for it at all. So talk to your DM if hiding is right for you in this encounter. Then we have the readied action. So the readied action is another one of those more nuanced actions. You can do quite a few things with the readied action, but basically, when you'd want to take the ready action is if there's nothing for you to do right now, but you anticipate that there will be something to do very soon, potentially before your next turn. So what you do is you will ready an action to either attack with a melee or ranged weapon, and you can even ready an action to cast a spell as long as that spell has a cast time of 1 action. Now, what do you need to do to set up a ready action? Well, you need to set up a trigger. So something that's going to take place that triggers the ready action. Usually this needs to be somewhat specific, like the next enemy to pass through the door, I want to shoot them with my crossbow. Or if that orc over there stands up, I want to cast magic missile at him. Something like that. These are readied actions. Now you can always choose to forego the readied action and not have it take place in any sort of way. When you use the ready action, you are also reserving your reaction for the round. If the trigger that you set up with the DM does not occur before your next turn, then your readied action will also go away. So keep those 2 facts in mind. It only will last for a turn, and if it does go off, it does use your reaction, so you won't have that for attacks of opportunity or additional spell casting that uses reaction time. Now, one thing I'll note here, which is going to be very meaningless because we haven't talked about spells, but if you're readying a spell as your action, you need to maintain concentration on that. What's concentration? Well, I'll talk about concentration probably in the next couple of episodes here because I really want to get into spell casting and how that works very shortly. So the last one we're going to talk about today is the search action, and the search action is basically I want to do a perception check to see what is odd about my surroundings, maybe try and find something that we're looking for, or you want to do an investigation check, look for maybe a trap door or a secret lever or some hidden obstacle somewhere. These are things you can do with the search action. It does take your main action to do any of the options that I listed here. This means that you will not be attacking or casting a spell. You'll be doing one of these instead on your turn of combat. Okay, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Eddie Proudfoot podcast. If you enjoyed it, please give us a follow on Instagram, Spotify, or Twitter. And as always, may the gods have mercy on your soul.